Hello, Bio 245. This is Vanessa again, and we're going to be going over functions and identification of muscles. And we're going to be doing this in a couple different videos. So we're going to be doing muscles of the trunk, which includes the front and the back, and then we're going to be doing muscles of the arm and the muscles of the leg. And I'll be going down the list, going in order, and going over the functions as well. So you'll see me look at the list every so often. That's where I'm looking when I'm looking away from you. So, Table 2. Let's start with the deltoid. Deltoid comes from the Greek word delta, meaning triangle. So if you do math, you know delta means change. It's that triangle symbol. Here it is on the shoulder in the deltoid region. So that's pretty helpful, right? So you can see it is that triangular shape. This guy is going to help with abduction at the shoulder. And just be sure that whenever you're referring to the function of a muscle on a test, you only need to know one function for a particular muscle. But just be sure that whenever you're talking about the action, that you're referring to the proper action term. So that means abduction, adduction, flexion, extension, etc. And that you refer either to the bone that it is moving, so like, you know, abduction of the humerus, or you could say abduction at the shoulder. So be specific. If you're not specific, you're going to get it wrong on the practical. So make sure that you're studying that appropriately. Moving on down, we have the Pectoralis Major. So if you look at our muscle model here, you'll see that there is a superficial side and that there's a deep side. Superficial being closer to the skin, deep being that we're closer to the bone. Okay, so on that superficial side, the Pectoralis Major is in the pectoral region. So that's pretty nice. And you can see that it's kind of attaching all the way here along the clavicle and along the sternum. So the action for a muscle is whenever it shortens, right? So when that muscle shortens. So what this muscle is going to be responsible for is abduction at the shoulder, but also flexion at the shoulder. So you guys know that whenever you do your exercises for your Pectoralis Major, you sit at one of those machines and you bring it in like this, right? So that's flexion at the shoulder or abduction at the shoulder. Moving on to the Pectoralis Minor. Pectoralis Minor is on the deep side, still in the pectoral region, and that's going to be stabilizing the scapula. So you'll notice that it's starting here on the ribs. There's some muscles that start on the ribs, so just be careful if they're on or in between the ribs. And it's actually, you can't see it very well in this model, but it's going to actually come back and attach onto the scapula. So it's going to help with stabilizing the scapula. It's also going to help with raising the ribs, because as you can see here, it's attached to the ribs. Moving on, we have the Serratus Anterior. The Serratus Anterior is also attached to the ribs, and it's going to be on both the superficial and the deep side. On the superficial side, let's move this down so you can actually see. On the superficial side, you'll just see that there's these muscles that come along the side of the ribs, and you can see that it has this serrated edge going on here. So that's your Serratus Anterior. And then on the deep side, you'll see that there's that serrated edge, right over here, okay? And that they're coming directly onto the ribs again. So that's how you should identify that is on top of the ribs. And for that Serratus Anterior, we have stabilization of the scapula because it actually comes back around and attaches to the bottom of the scapula. It also protracts the scapula, so that means bringing it back. You can't really see my scapula, but it protracts it, brings it back. And then rotation of the scapula upward as well, so it'll actually swing that scapula up. Okay. Next, we have the intercostals. So a lot of people I see confuse things on the practical. They confuse these Serratus Anterior with the intercostals. Intercostal, inter always means between. So when we're looking at our intercostals, we're looking on the deep side here. Let's get this a little closer. Let's aim this down just a touch. So we're going to be looking at in between our ribs on the side, but also right here, okay? So inter means between, intercostal, costal means the ribs. So we have an internal set and an external set. And you can see here really finely that there are these numbers. So number 21 is going to be our internal set and number 20 is going to be our external set. But for functions, external intercostal, that's going to be inhalation. And you can kind of see that it's a step up. So if I run my finger across here, it comes against this ridge, and so it's a step up, and that's going to be your external intercostals, okay? And that helps with inhalation. It does have a different grain direction than our internal intercostals. I think it's kind of hard to differentiate, but it does slant down towards your medial line, okay, towards the midline. So it's going to slant down in that direction. For our intercostals, they are more internal. So again, the external is kind of like a step up, and then the internal is deep. This one points up towards the midline or points down away from it, however you want to think, but it's going the opposite direction. This guy is going to help with holding the ribs steady. That's pretty much the function that I found on Wikipedia, so that's one I would stick with if I were you. The other way that you can see your internal intercostals is if you take that chest plate and look at the inside. So this is the inside, so this is external, whoops, or anterior, this is the posterior side of our chest plate. And between our ribs here, that is your intercostal, or your internal intercostals, okay? And they help with stabilizing the ribs or holding them steady. Next, going down the list, we have the Rectus Abdominis. And be careful with your spelling, because as you guys know, spelling is important on the practical. So it goes rectus, so that's R-E-C-T-U-S, and then abdominis, if you're going to want to go with the Latin pronunciation, which I do because that helps me remember how to spell stuff. So rectus and then abdominis, so that's I-N-I-S at the end. There's no U in there. Okay, so rectus abdominis are your abs. They help with flexion at the waist. That simple. So you guys know when you do a sit-up, that's flexion. Moving on down your list, we have the external and internal obliques. So here's our external oblique over on the superficial side, and then we have our internal obliques on the deep side. And you'll notice that the grains go opposite directions. So what people say for remembering the directions of our obliques is for your externals, you put your hands in your pockets. For your internals, you draw your sword from its scabbard, or from its whatever it's called.
Sheath.
But from its sheath or something, but you pull your sword out like that. And for the external, you put your hands in your pockets. So that's the direction of the grain, okay? As far as the action, you can see for the external intercostal, for the external oblique, we have contralateral lateral rotation. So that means when this guy flexes, you rotate laterally the other way, okay, at the trunk. For the internal obliques, when that guy flexes, you rotate this on the same side, okay? So that's ipsilateral lateral rotation, okay? Going on down, we have the transversus abdominis. The transversus abdominis is deep, deep, deep. So, again, we're going to be looking on the posterior side of our chest plate, okay? So, again, here's that anterior side, there's posterior side. And if you look in here, you'll see that the transversus abdominis is here. So the rectus abdominis, the grain goes up and down. The transversus abdominis, it goes transverse to the midline. So this guy's going to compress your organs, okay? So this helps with like bowel movements and stuff, all the fun stuff. Moving on, we are going to go to the back. So we've finished up the front, and now we're going to turn him around and do the back. And again, we still have our deep side over here and our superficial side over here. Okay? So I'm going to be, for some of these muscles, I'll be describing what they look like if they were superficial on both sides. Okay? So first off, we have our trapezius. Okay, so if the trapezius were fully intact, it would extend down from the base of the neck. Sorry, I'm like trying to do this backwards. It looks backwards on the screen, but from the base of the neck out to the shoulders and then down to the spine, right where you see right here. Oh my goodness, right there. Okay, so it kind of forms a diamond, like so. Okay, it has many functions, but remember you only need to know one for the practical, right? So it helps with extension of the neck. It helps with rotation, retraction, elevation, and depression of the scapula. So it's doing a lot of stuff with the scapula, and you can actually see that it's kind of attaching onto the scapula over here. So again, for the scapula, it's rotating it, retracting it, elevating it, and depressing it. So lots of stuff. Moving on to some deep guys. So these are part of your shoulder girdle. So first off, we have the subscapularis. To see the subscapularis, you actually need to take the arm off, because where's your subscapular fossa? It's on the anterior side or the deep side. So your subscapularis, same deal. So here again is your posterior side of your shoulder girdle, and here's the anterior side. So subscapularis is covering your subscapular fossa. Okay. Okay, so like I was saying, the subscapularis is part of your shoulder girdle, and it's going to be on the anterior side of your scapula, covering the subscapular fossa. As far as, so here it is right here, this whole thing right here. Okay. So as far as function, the subscapularis helps to medially rotate your humerus and stabilize your shoulder. So that's its job in life. Okay. Moving on in your shoulder girdle, we have the supraspinatus and the infraspinatus. The supraspinatus, as you could imagine, is in your supraspinous fossa. So look on the deep side over here. There is your supraspinatus, and let's take off the deltoid so you can see a little bit better. So here's your supraspinatus. Here's the spine. It's superior to it. Then we have the infraspinatus just underneath it. Okay. So the supraspinatus actually comes across here and kind of comes over onto the humerus. So it's going to help with abduction of the humerus and also stabilization of the shoulder. Whenever you see stabilization of the shoulder, what this really means is that it's holding the humerus and the scapula together, because that's a joint. Okay. Infraspinatus helps with the lateral rotation of the humerus and also stabilizes the shoulder. And like I said, you only have to remember one function, so if you even just remember stabilization of the shoulder, life is good. Moving on. On the deep side here, and kind of still covered anyway, next on your list is the Erector Spinae. The Erector Spinae, as you can imagine, since the word spine is in there, is this muscle that goes parallel to the spine here. So it starts right around here and comes down like so. You can see that there's this muscle that crosses over it, but don't worry about that. It's this deep guy right here, super deep, okay? And this is going to help with extension of the spine or with posture. So extension of the spine would be like one of these. Okay. Moving on, we have the Rhomboid Major and the Rhomboid Minor. Whenever you see major and minor, it's usually indicating the size. So rhomboid, because it is like this little parallelogram, rhomboid, as you guys know, is a four-sided shape. Didn't know this would be a geometry class, did you? But here is our Rhomboid Major. Right above it is our Rhomboid Minor. Same kind of shape, but smaller. And they both do the same job, so that's pretty cool. They both retract the scapula, so they pull that scapula kind of back. Okay, so like I said, I can't really show you on me because my shirt is kind of loose, but it retracts the scapula, brings it out and back. Okay. Okay, or pinches your scapulas together. That's another good way to think about it. It can like pinch your scapulas together. Okay, then we have the teres major and the teres minor. You can see this on both the deep and the superficial side. On the superficial side, you can see the teres major and the teres minor over here. So this is the teres major underneath, and the teres minor is this tiny little triangle right here. So minor, major. So in both cases of the rhomboids and the teres, the major is down low and the minor is above it. So that's another way to remember it. On the deep side over here, here's our teres major, and then our teres minor is right here. So that supraspinatus kind of forms this like axe shape, like that. And so then there's your teres minor right underneath it, and then there's your teres major. Okay, and you can see that the teres major kind of tucks under this way, and it actually comes over. I don't think that it shows it. No, not really. But it actually comes over to the front of the humerus, whereas that teres minor comes to the back of the humerus. So they're both helping with rotation of the humerus in different directions. The teres major is going to help with internal rotation, so there we go. Internal rotation like so, and then the teres minor is going to help with lateral or external rotation, so out like that. So internal, external. Okay, teres major, teres minor. Lastly, for the trunk, and then this video is done, is the Latissimus Dorsi. So the Latissimus Dorsi, lattice latissimus comes from the word lattice, which means broad. Dorsi is coming from the word dorsum, which means back. So it is a broad muscle of the back. So just looking at this, you can kind of see it's going to be this guy, right? So you can see he starts here at the spine, and he's coming out. And actually, you can't see on the model because the arms are detachable, but ultimately that Latissimus Dorsi will come and attach into the humerus. So its job in life is it can extend your arm at the shoulder. So when I say extend at the shoulder, when I talk about like flexion versus extension of the shoulder in general, this is flexion of the shoulder, this is extension of the shoulder. Okay? So as you guys probably know, if you're doing lat pulls are where you reach up like this and you pull down. So that's when you're working at your lats, you pull back like that. So that's going to be adduction at the shoulder, and again also extension at the shoulder. So that's your muscles of the front and back of the trunk. That's the end of table 2. So come back for more videos. We'll have muscles of the arms and we'll have muscles of the legs.